In the busy streets of New York City, between its food deliveries, the commuters, and the leisure riders, biking is more popular than ever. Unfortunately though, with the rise in this environmentally friendly trend, there also comes a really sad reality. There's been a surge in bike accidents and fatalities, and 2023 alone has seen some of its worst yet. As someone who lives in this vibrant metropolis and rides their bike at least a few times a week, I'm frequently experiencing the challenges of navigating these less than ideal streets, and in truth, it never feels safe. And so for years now, I've been looking for new yet still practical ways to improve riding safety. And that brings us to today's video where we're checking out the BaseCamp SF-999. And at first glance, this looks like your regular biking helmet. But once we turn it around, that's where we notice it's integrated turn signals and it's one solid light that can either be turned on or off. Aside from that, this also has a number of other smart features built into it, and that includes Bluetooth, which when paired to your phone or your device allows you to listen to music, podcasts, or GPS directions through its two built-in speakers, which are located next to your ears, as well as using it for voice calls, as it has a built-in noise-canceling microphone located at the front. So the question that we'll try to answer in this review is, does this new smart helmet offer enough in terms of features as well as safety improvements to make a meaningful difference on your next ride? This is actually a two-part system. We've got the smart helmet as well as its controller, which is built into a strap, and this attaches to your handlebars. To get things started, you're going to turn on the helmet using its power button there.
Bluetooth mode.
Now, if you've heard that voice before, you know we're in for a treat with this, because that is the generic, as I like to call it, broken English voice that you hear with a lot of rather cheap Bluetooth systems. As soon as I heard that, I knew this probably cut some corners. It was just using more of like a generic module in here. And if that's the voice that you have to hear every time it pairs with your device and turns on, there's a good chance you also have to hear it with some of its other features, and we'll get into that in just a bit. Next up, we've got this button here, which is illuminated green. Holding it for a few seconds, about 5 seconds, will actually put it into its pairing mode so you can pair it with a new device. But if you actually hold it for just 2 seconds, that's where we now see its solid hazard light that will always stay on. It doesn't blink, it doesn't react to your braking or anything like that. So it's not that smart, but if you just want that additional safety when you're not using your turn signals, it's a good light to have. Now, tied in with that, of course, we have the controller. So we just have to, I believe, press it once, and it'll then turn on and automatically pair with our helmet. And actually, that middle button there, as you may have heard, was actually activating the music from my phone, so it acts as your pause and play button as well. But of course, the most important thing here is our turn signals.
Turn left, beware. Turn left, beware.
You heard that voice.
Turn right, beware. Turn right, beware. Turn right, beware.
Isn't that awesome? If you couldn't tell already, it will continue on loop, repeating turn right, beware, or turn left, beware, until you end your turn on your controller. A huge disappointment and very annoying. And as I'll touch upon again, it's, in my case, a reason why I might not want to use the turn signals at all, just because I don't want to constantly hear that. And in fact, if you've ever found yourself at a left turn where it's green for the oncoming traffic and you have to kind of wait until it clears up, so, you know, just constantly having your left turn signal on for that amount of time is just going to drive you crazy. But that also brings me into my next point, and something that I think is very important, not just for me, but anyone who's kind of into that very heavy, whether it's New York City or any other city. If you've got a lot of traffic, there's a good chance you're dealing with oncoming traffic, like I said in the example with that left turn lane. As far as you can tell from the front of this helmet, this is just a regular dumb helmet. No turn signals, no static lights. And so the safety features offered by this are limited to traffic behind you rather than oncoming traffic. So unfortunately, this is not actually going to help you at all in those situations. But before getting into more of the nitty-gritty in my experience using this, let's talk more about the hardware, fit, and feel with this helmet. In here, we have a removable, actually very well padded liner. It's quick drying, it's very comfortable. And tied in with that, we have a really nice ventilation system which allows your airflow to very nicely flow through these chambers here and it keeps your head cool. There were a couple times where I rode, in fact, more than 16 miles on 80+ degree days in very direct sunlight, and with the exception of helmet hair, I felt pretty good by the end of my ride. Now in front of our controls here, we also see this lip. It's a bit of a visor, though I wouldn't go as far as calling it a sun visor. Perhaps it's adding to the aerodynamics, though in truth it's probably just more for aesthetics. Possibly to break your fall a little bit better, as maybe this can crumple inwards if you take a direct fall to your head. I'm not entirely sure about that though. Now of course on the bottom we've got our chin straps, but the other thing is we have this really cool quick release system, which when we pull up on this dial allows us to make really fast adjustments. So we can just pull that out as well as push it back in and then snap it. Now, of course, between the music playback as well as the lights, we are using power. So this does have a built-in battery. It's a 3.7 volt, 1000 milliamp battery. It can give you about 16 hours with just using the lights, or about 8 hours just with music playback. Or if you're doing lights and music playback, it'll drop to about 5 hours. Now in the front here, hidden below the strap in front of our forehead, not sure how well this is picked up, we have a USB-C port. Yep, right there. We have a USB-C port, and that's what's going to recharge this helmet. I'm not too sure how long this is going to last, as it's using your typical CR177, I don't even remember, but you know, your typical kind of like watch battery is hidden below here. Now in the box, they do give you, I think, one extra battery, so that is nice. But unlike this is not rechargeable. Now, before I tell you about more of the functionality that you get with the controller, let's talk a little bit more about the final specs on here. Bluetooth 5.3 and IPX5 water resistant. So it can take a light splash. You can ride this in light rain, and not that you'd really want to, but this probably isn't going to be the best thing for heavier downpour rain. Now with any reputable helmet, it has gone through its crash ratings, and that includes CPSC 16, CFR Part 1 1203, and ASTM F1447. Oh, and lastly, CEEN 1078. Now, if you're not familiar with those, you can look them up and see what they do. Basically, they're just different crash ratings based on different countries and regions. A lot of them overlap as far as what they're testing. Last thing I want to mention before moving on, this is an all black design. Currently, I believe there's only one color available. You have this kind of carbon fiber looking side. Not a sticker as far as I can tell, though when you look at it up close, you do see a couple deformities, not the highest quality in truth. On the back here, we have their logo. This is non-removable. It's kind of got a little bit of texture to it, a little bit of a smooth erased texture. It looks really nice without being too in your face. And then lastly, on the right side, we do have a BaseCamp logo. This is removable as it's a sticker, so if you don't want that, you can completely get rid of it. The helmet weighs about 0.85 pounds, and it can be adjusted between 22 inches to 24 inches. So let's get back to the controller itself. The placement of this is also very crucial. I found in order to, make it convenient to reach, you want to have it somewhere on your actual handlebar grips, probably on the inner sides, either on your left or on your right, but on the inner sides, that way your thumbs can easily reach them. Plus and minus, found at the top and bottom, that's going to increase the volume of your playback. The thing is, it's actually only increasing the volume of the helmet itself. That is independent of the volume on your phone. So if your phone's volume is set really low or really high, it's not actually changing the volume of the phone itself, it's just changing the volume of the helmet. Obviously, like we said, one click of the left or right activates your turn signal, and clicking it again will deactivate it. However, if we long press on either the left or right, that's going to do the next or previous track. And then like we were showing earlier, the middle button is either going to pause or play our music, or it's going to end a call if we're on a call. Speaking of calls, there's a couple weird things going on here. First off, the audio quality while you're riding, unless you're honestly 8 miles per hour or less, it gets pretty windy. The person on the other line is going to notice that you are probably riding or there's some heavy wind going on. Even under ideal conditions, just with the helmet on and you're walking around in a room like this, the audio quality still doesn't sound that great. And the same thing goes for the actual audio of the speakers. In a best case scenario, it's either too loud or too tinny. I can never get the right volume for this. and it just never sounds good. Obviously, I'm not like expecting bass. I'm not expecting these to sound like Beats Pro or AirPods, and I'll talk about AirPods in a second. It's not good. And that's for music. When it comes to podcasts, the volume is just either too low, or when I'm riding, the wind is just overpowering it that I can never really actually hear what they're saying. So audio playback has never really been an enjoyable part of this helmet either. Now that brings me back to another very important point, and that's when you're actually using the turn signals, as that's the main feature of this. It seems to like disable Bluetooth completely, as your music will cut off. So you're not hearing any music, you're not hearing your GPS directions. But the thing that was a giveaway is that my audio completely cut out for the microphone too. So if you're on a call, no one's gonna hear you anymore, and you're not gonna hear them. So again, going back to that point I mentioned earlier, if you're at a light trying to turn left with oncoming traffic, so not only are you gonna hear that on loop, but your music is gonna stop, you're not gonna hear your GPS directions, and your audio call is basically gonna be dropped. So in many ways, the SF-999 is a really great concept. It's not the only smart helmet out there, but it is one of the cheaper ones available. That said, it does have a number of quirks and drawbacks. As we've mentioned, if you can even get past the really annoying voice, and again, that might not seem like a lot, but when you're hearing it on loop over and over and over again until you're done with your turn, you're gonna really hate it. And then tied in with that, you're not hearing your music playback, you're not hearing your GPS playback, you're not hearing your call. It really basically disables all of the other smart features when you're using the core function of this helmet. And then speaking of core functions, I would have really preferred if the main turn signals, the main lights, the main safety features of this just felt very refined. The controller didn't feel as cheap. The whole overall system didn't feel as cheap and gimmicky. You know, I wasn't annoyed to use. So some things that they could fix are adding lights to the front, at least a front light. If they could add turn signals as well to the front, that'd be really awesome. If they could update the Bluetooth module or interface, get rid of that voice. Even if they have to use a reminder, use a less annoying one, maybe less frequently too. But as it stands right now, there's a lot of potential with this helmet and this concept of a helmet. But for right now, it just doesn't offer enough, in my opinion, to one, justify its price. But that brings me to my next very important point, and that's sometimes old school methods are better than, you know, new technology. I get what this helmet is trying to do, it's not executing it well. In many ways, just using hand signals, especially for oncoming traffic, is more effective. They can see that. This helmet has no way to identify to the people in front of me that I'm turning. I need to use my hands still. The microphones, the speakers in there aren't that great. In fact, I would say at best they're, and this is being generous, 4 out of 10 for a helmet like this. Using one AirPod is more reliable, it sounds better, and yes, it's over 2 times the price of this. I understand that, but the point I want to highlight is a lot of people have AirPods already or some other earbud. So if you're comfortable with riding with that, if it doesn't impede your ability to ride and you don't feel unsafe, especially if you have something like transparency mode so you can hear everything happening around you, or at least just use one, you're gonna get a much better experience with earbuds that you already have. But the bigger point I wanna mention is if you're thinking of getting this because of those smart features, you're like, ooh, I like the convenience of it being built in rather than using my AirPods. You know, I like the idea of turn signals. You need to understand that as it is in this current prototype state, it's very limited and it doesn't work really well. But being a little optimistic here, if they could perhaps bring some of those improvements with a future model, I think it would actually be a very successful product. So hopefully we see something like that sometime in the future. This has been Paul with MakeUseOf.com. Let us know your thoughts on this smart helmet in the comments down below. And if you have any questions, you can ask it there too. And until next one, we'll catch you later.